Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Reverend Kevin Hartman, who's here to share with us his new book, Journey Through Grief, A Long Road Ahead. So how do we define healing when grief really never goes away? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Reverend Kevin Hartman is a passionate preacher, mental health advocate, community leader with over a decade of ministry experience, and author of Journey Through Grief. He began preaching in 2013 at Lovely Baptist Church under the mentorship of his grandfather, Pastor Wilbert Crew, eventually serving as a youth leader and associate minister. His leadership was especially impactful during the COVID-19 pandemic when he introduced virtual services and partnered with city officials and nonprofits to support the community's emotional and spiritual needs. By emphasizing mental health awareness and support, Reverend Hartman demonstrated his commitment to a holistic ministry that extends beyond the pulpit. Reverend Hartman holds an Associate of Arts in Communications from Montgomery County Community College, a mental health first aid certification, and has completed coursework at Palmer Theological Seminary. He currently serves in pastoral ministry in the Philadelphia area and sits on several nonprofit boards focused on social impact. So welcome to the show, Reverend Kevin Hartman.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm so excited to be here today. And just thank you for having me on and excited to talk about my journey.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I have to tell you, once I picked this book up and started reading it, I could not put it down. And I know this is a lot, but I would love for you to share with our listeners why this book was important for you to write now.
So this book was important because my journey started primarily my parents. I've lost people before then, but on November 11, 2022, my dad passed away suddenly from a massive heart attack. And then 10 months later, unfortunately, the worst thing in the world happened on September 28th, 2023. My mom suddenly passed away at the age of 60. So that really inspired me to really start talking about grief and helping people cope with it and connecting people with my story because it was so difficult for me and understanding. I'm pretty sure it's difficult for anyone.
Well, grief is a path that we're all going to walk someday, and it's so difficult and so hard. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, that is just,
Thank you.
that's so overwhelming losing two parents so close together.
Yeah, it was, and even moments now, it still is.
Well, and I think that in some way is encouraging for people to hear because a lot of times we're kind of in this society that's like someone's passed, you've done the funeral, it's been 2 weeks, time for you to get back to work. You've got to be over it now, and we're just not wired that way.
No, it's really just not realistic because sometimes when you're doing a funeral and someone just dies, first you're dealing with shock, and then of course with the funeral, sometimes you're dealing with so much planning and the business part of it and insurance and the service that you don't even get a chance to really grieve when that happens.
Is it because everyone's kind of in a, like you're saying, a state of shock and they just have things to do, so they're doing one thing after another after another?
Exactly. You're in shock. You're planning a funeral, and I know different cultures do different things, but I know for me, when my parents died, we had other than the insurance stuff, and you had to figure out who was getting the person dressed. We had a whole church service, and then for me, I actually had to prepare eulogies. I actually preached their funerals, and along with preaching their funerals, we had full blown church services. Then afterwards, we had a repast. So it's a lot entailing that where you don't even get a chance to feel all the way.
I'm sure you have many people that come to you to deal with grief and their sorrow, especially because the grief you went through in many ways was so very public. What are some of the things that people reach out to you about?
Sometimes people may reach out to me about, can you pray for me? I just lost this loved one. I may have other colleagues reach out to me about, hey, I'm about to eulogize this family member. What do you think it is? And then also people that deal with depression, anxiety, they'll reach out to me, ask for prayer, they might ask for advice. And I think it just simply comes from the fact that they see me go through it, and not that I've always handled it perfectly, but they have seen me handle it. So I feel like they look at me for insight on those type of things.
Yeah, they're seeing that you're still able to function and work and move forward with grief, even though we might still be grieving.
Right. And I try to be honest. Like, I don't know if you really stop grieving, you know? It looks different for all of us. And I think we go through different stages, but I don't think you ever really stop.
I have to say that's probably one of the most insightful phrases I think I've heard on grief in a long time because usually we'll hear people say, well, we work through it and try to manage it. But I mean, I still grieve the ones that I've lost. So I can understand that feeling and that emotion.
I think it's a process. I think it looks different for everyone. I don't think grieving doesn't mean I'm going to stand in a corner crying all the time, but I still have moments where I hear a certain song, eat certain foods, or I might drive by a particular location and then instantly I'll think of a loved one. I'll think of my dad or I'll think of my mom just from seeing certain things. So certain things trigger it. I could be having a great day, but just from seeing a certain thing, a matter of fact, just this past Friday, I was looking around and I was thinking about what I was going to eat. I went to a Chinese store not that far from me, and I didn't even think about it, but that was the place that my dad used to get us food every Friday. It instantly triggered me.
Having those memories and that connection, I mean, how deep is that? And it kind of makes me think about Mother's Day. It seems that days like Mother's Day is such a big deal, and for many people, grief really resurfaces even years later.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about Mother's Day for years, and I've seen people on social media post about it. And honestly, I couldn't relate until my mom passed away. I did not understand how brutally, just emotionally tough not having a mother anymore on earth. And Mother's Day is on the calendar. It's one of the most surreal things in the world.
How do you process and just honor the memory of your mother on Mother's Day while dealing with your grief?
This last Mother's Day was actually my first Mother's Day without my mom. This one will be my second. And I woke up fine. I remember last year, I remember stopping to get coffee and then just suddenly breaking down crying in the car on my way to church. Because I think me getting the coffee reminded me of how I would usually make her breakfast or brunch every single Mother's Day. I would make it from scratch. I would make her a bunch of different things. I do think, as much as it made me cry, but me even posting a tribute on Facebook and saying my personal feelings and looking at old pictures, they made me cry. But they weren't just tears of sadness; they were tears of gratitude that I could say so many good things about my mother. And I think that's one of the positives when you can look back of a memory of your mom and you can just say great things about them or look at different memories or speak of different stories. I think it's as much as sad as it is, it's also a feeling of gratitude as well.
What are some ways, some unspoken ways that people mask pain, especially during times like Mother's Day or Christmas or New Year's?
I would say one way is just acting like you don't care when deep down you really do. Trying to ignore the date on the calendar. I think you can mask pain through different coping mechanisms people use to mask pain, whatever it could be. It varies for different people. I do think one of the things, especially as a male, one of the ways you mask pain, usually you try to act like it doesn't bother you, which I don't think is healthy, but that's something That's a very common thing for us.
So, what are some ways that we can start embracing grief in a healthy way?
I think one of the great ways of embracing the grief is allowing yourself to feel. I think that's something that's important. Don't ignore it. Allow yourself to feel it. Do something in honor of the person. Journal about it. Matter of fact, in my book, I actually wrote a whole chapter about Mother's Day. I did it to help people, but I also did it as a journal and a way for me to cope with it, to be honest about my feelings about it, how much it hurt, but also to celebrate my mother. And I think that's just some of the things you can do. You can cook their favorite meal, you can do a project in their honor. There's a lot of different things you can do.
I was really touched by the chapter in your book where you share about embracing grief. And one of the examples you give is enjoy and appreciate every moment. Do not procrastinate and forgive. My goodness, what a powerful reminder. Those have really stuck with me, and it's not something that a lot of people think about. Can you please share more about this?
Oh, yeah. So what really spurred that about don't procrastinate any moment was my mom, she died at 60, but a few days before we were just sitting down talking and we made plans for that Friday to go try this new seafood place because we both loved food. One of the things that I noticed that when she died suddenly is when I looked in her room, she died September 20th, 2023. But when I looked at her room, she had 2024 goals. And that hit me like a brick because that let me know she was not expecting to die and she had different goals. So ever since I seen that, I just said to myself, you had to enjoy the moment. And it sounds so cliche, but it's really, really true. You have to enjoy the moment. You have to embrace each moment. You have to embrace each second because there's a lesson in each moment. There's a memory in each moment. There's fun in each moment. And you just don't know when it's your last one. So you just need to make the most of it with yourself and with your loved ones.
How about the topic of forgiveness? Why is that so important?
I think with forgiveness, it's a sense of release because sometimes you can harbor bitterness or unforgiveness towards people that you kind of crush the beauty out of a connection with someone. And then when they're gone or you're no longer connected to them, it can bring on regret, which I think ultimately hurts you more than it hurts the other person.
There's a quote in your book: carrying resentment only ties you to a cycle of anger and unhappiness. And how true is that, and how it frees us when we get to this place of forgiveness?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think once you get rid of the resentment, even if the other person has it towards you, there's a certain freedom that you can walk in, and there's a certain joy that you can walk in when you let go of that.
So, I'd like to talk about your perspective on grief and how that really has evolved during the writing of this book.
My perspective on grief, it has shifted. When my dad died, I was like very super depressed, used different things to cope that I shouldn't have. Now, when my mom died, there's nothing like a mom. Let me just add that right there. Nothing like a mom in the world. And when my mom died, it really hit me. It shocked me. But of course, relying on my faith and prayer. But also, as much as it hurt me, it kind of motivated me in a weird sense because I felt like that was the only thing I had left and I wanted to make them proud. I did different things to try to projects to make them proud. But one of the things I figured, I said, why won't I write a book to help other people with their grief? Because in my upbringing, especially in the church upbringing, I would get to hear a lot of scriptures and prayers on how to deal with grief, or somebody would just say, just pray about it, or just give me random scriptures. And even as much as I appreciated that, in some ways, I felt like it wasn't really helping me practically. And I know if I am a preacher and people think that, I can only imagine what somebody else might think. So I wanted to give something that didn't just cast away my spiritual beliefs, but I wanted something practical that can go alongside it. And doing that, it freed me up. Now, while the pain is still there, it's giving me a sense of purpose. So it has really shifted my views on grief.
With that shift in your views, Are you living your life from the standpoint of living in honor of your mother and father?
It's part of it, but I think the biggest thing with them is just making good on what they invested in me. So even if it's not always about making them proud, whatever I do, because I think the thing that would make my parents proud the most is walking in my authentic purpose. And I think that's what makes them proud, doing that. Not maybe not a certain career path, not a certain status, but I think it's just doing authentically what I'm supposed to be doing and who I'm authentically supposed to be.
What would you say your authentic purpose is?
My authentic purpose is to impact lives by any means necessary. I want people to see my light and for that light to inspire them to be all that they're supposed to be. So no matter what they're going through, no matter what's going on in their life, no matter what they're dealing with, that they see me go through and see me handle it. And that gives them hope that they can handle it too. And it looks different ways. It could be a book, it could be a message, and sometimes it's just on social media cooking a good meal and making insane jokes. But any way that it works to help someone, that's what I want to do, and I think that's my purpose ultimately.
I've heard that this book is called a companion for people suffering from deep grief, helping them feel less alone.
Yeah, because Marianne, I really do think grief can really be one of the loneliest things in the world because we are expected to just move forward in life. Life is just so fast. And even if you're at work, you might get some bereavement days, but you're expected to just get right back to it. And people will sometimes say they understand and say they're looking out for you and say that take your time, but at the end of the day the world doesn't stop, and sometimes we have to keep on going and keep showing up, keep smiling, keep working, keep creating whatever we're doing, but you still have that hole in your heart, and that's just a lonely feeling, and that's still a feeling that I even feel still right now, where you had to keep on pushing on, because at the end of the day, when people say sorry for your loss, it truly is your loss. They may have experienced the loss of a loved one, but they don't feel your loss the way you feel your loss.
What advice would you give to those coping with the loss of a loved one?
Well, there's a few things I would do. I would say don't be afraid to find a counselor, a grief counseling, a therapist to talk to. Of course, I will always refer about praying, but also having trusted people that you can be around to talk about your grief. And I will also say trying to find a way to align yourself with your purpose. Because sometimes when you lose a loved one, especially if there's somebody you're close to, it makes you wonder, like, why? Why should I keep going on? Because life just happens so fast. So why should I keep on going? And sometimes doing something that's bigger than you can give you your why to keep on going. So those are some things I would really do to help.
Now, is this especially true for men since we've conditioned men in many ways to not have feelings, not care, not show when we know better now that that is that's not good for them.
Especially true for men, because we're conditioned to say, "Oh, men don't cry." And even if that's not said, it's still somewhat insinuated throughout society. So, and I believe that holding in that pain, not talking about that pain, brings on more problems than it should. And what happens is we go through this thing they call misplaced emotion, and we find ourselves lashing out or doing things, sometimes lashing out at people and doing things out of emotion, thinking is one thing, but it's really dealt with grief, depression, pain, whatever it may be.
Do you counsel with people who are experiencing grief or the effects of long-term grief?
Yes, I do. But because I'm not a clinical professional, I typically, if I feel like it's, that term I would say above my pay grade, I definitely refer people, and I know people to refer them to and different programs and stuff. So that's one of the things I do. So I kind of go off wisdom, but definitely having the experiences that I've had, unfortunately, it does give me a relatability with people with certain things that maybe even a counselor can't give because I've been there and I've been through it. So there's certain things I can give, but clinically, I definitely will refer them to someone.
Well, and as a reverend, you're able to have this connection with people on a very spiritual level, on a soul level, where maybe that's not a place they go to with a counselor.
Exactly, exactly, and that's just something. And some people want that spiritual connection. So sometimes it's able to pray. Sometimes I'm eulogizing the loved one. One of my favorite things to do with people that are going through sometimes is just cooking them a meal and bringing it to them, just to build that warmth and that connection. When sometimes people just need someone to listen to, and then at the end of the conversation, just pray. I do think that the spiritual connection and just the relatability of going through something that somebody already going through something that somebody is going through is really valuable.
Is it that people just don't know what to do or say and they kind of, in many ways, just kind of immobilize from moving forward and helping people through grief?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and I think people underrate the power of presence, the power of just being there for someone, being a listening ear. Maybe some of the best moments was someone calling me and saying, "Hey, let's go grab some food." Now, sometimes I really didn't want to, but sometimes it's people giving that effort. Sometimes just a phone call, sometimes just a card. So sometimes when you don't know what to do or know what to say or know how to show up for someone, you can always ask them. But sometimes just a small gesture can keep someone from drowning emotionally. Really, it really can.
It's so easy in grief to get into a dark place where you don't want to see anybody, you don't want to do anything. And it's always the calls and the reaching out of those friends and family members that help pull us out of those places. And I learned a lot of that from your book.
It really does because I can recall several times being in the house by myself. Especially me, I was in the house. In the house that my mom died. I live in that house. Sometimes you have your mind drifts and you go back to different memories from when you were as a teenager or a few years ago. Might be a certain time where you remember you make a certain meal, and sometimes someone calling you can keep you from playing, rewinding that thought over and over again. And while those memories sometimes are good to think about, sometimes it could just get you into a dark hole just thinking about it because you know you can't get those moments back.
Do you feel that grief is especially difficult for men?
No doubt about it. Because I just don't think we really, most of us are really conditioned or raised with dealing, processing, and expressing especially expressing our emotions. So, and sometimes we don't even know how we feel. We're not used to talking about it so much. It just gets difficult.
Well, I'm so glad that we're having this discussion because I think it opens the door for many people that are in serious grief and maybe for the first time putting their foot on that path of their grief journey going, okay, maybe I have somebody that can help me through this.
Yeah, I agree. I do think I do think that this book is helpful. I do think therapy is helpful. And I just think it's great to listen to people's stories who've been through it because it just has a different connection level. Because sometimes when you're going through something, you feel like you're the only one that's going through it. You feel like you're the only one that understands it, especially the loss of a mom. And one of the things that I didn't know would bother me was if you go on Mother's Day, you go on Facebook and you see someone else still has their mom, or even if you talk to friends, people are complaining about their mother, depending on if it seems like it's something minor and they're complaining about them all the time. It just makes you so upset. But then when you see other people who understand that you feel that way, you don't feel so, you don't feel so ridiculous feeling like that because there's other people you hear that feel the same way you feel.
What messages would you offer someone experiencing grief of like a parent for the first time?
I would say there's a few things I would say. Losing a parent for the first time is that you have to get ready to create a new normal. things will never. You're not just memorializing the person, but you're also memorializing that part of your life. You'll never be the same again. And I know that, and of course, that sounds sad, and it is sad. But there's also is an opportunity to create a new normal and evolve from there as well, because that person can no longer play that role in your life. So this also gives you a chance to evolve from that moment from here on out. So even though it's sad, even though it's hard, I do think it's an opportunity to evolve. So I would say just don't look at the pain. Be real about the pain. But I would say when you lose a parent, you lose that figure, this is your chance to evolve and maybe even take on some of the responsibilities or legacy that they left.
Reverend Hartman, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about Journey Through Grief?
Oh, great. Yeah. So Journey Through Grief is on Amazon. The book is Journey Through Grief, subtitle A Long Road Ahead. It can be found on Amazon. Just look up Kevin Hartman. You can also get it on my website, www.kevwhartman.com. And also, you can follow me on Instagram at Kev W. Hartman, where I post a lot of inspirational reels. I talk about grief at least once a week on Instagram and coping mechanisms and my stories, and just try to do a lot of encouraging things. So you can definitely connect with me on there as well.
Well, Reverend Hartman, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
No, I'm honored. And thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share my story. And I really hope it's helpful to a lot of people today.
Well, thank you, Reverend Hartman. It's such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Journey Through Grief. Make sure to connect with Reverend Hartman at kevwhartman.com to learn more about his work, his counseling, and to be part of his community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.